picture the scene. It's just before dawn, June 28th, 1880, and we are deep in the Australian bush at a place called Glenrowan.
Right. It's freezing cold.
Yeah, there's this heavy mist in the air, and the police have the entire area completely surrounded.
And, they aren't just standing there with handcuffs and wooden billies. They are armed with Martini Henry rifles.
Which, and for those of you who maybe aren't military historians, let's just pause on that detail for a second. The Martini Henry is a very serious weapon.
Oh, absolutely.
It's a heavy caliber breech loader. It is literally designed to tear through flesh and bone. This was the standard British Army rifle of the era.
Yeah, if you get hit by one of these, you are not getting back up. I mean, it's designed to stop a charging horse in its tracks.
Exactly. So the police are expecting a shootout, sure, but they're expecting to fire upon men in normal cloth coats. They're expecting the standard physics of the Victorian era to apply here.
But then something completely impossible happens. Something that just creates this moment of absolute cognitive dissonance for every single officer standing there in the mist.
Because from behind the lines out of the mist, a creature appears.
Yeah.
And I'm using the word creature deliberately there because that is exactly how the witnesses described it at the time.
It doesn't even look human to them.
No.
Yeah.
It has no head. It has this massive, thick neck, an immense chest, and it's moving with this slow, lurching, kind of ungainly gait.
Just walking directly into a hail of bullets.
Directly into it. The police open fire, volley after volley. And the bullets are hitting this thing, but they aren't stopping it. They are literally bouncing off.
You can just imagine the sound of that, the clang of heavy lead hitting iron. It must have sounded like a factory floor right in the middle of the quiet bush.
That must have been absolutely terrifying. And then the thing stops. It moves its headless neck mechanically, almost like a tank turret, and then it responds.
But not just with a pistol shot.
Right? It takes its revolver and it hammers the butt of the gun against its own chest plate. The source text we're looking at describes it ringing out with the clearness of a blacksmith's hammer in the morning air.
And then a voice booms out from inside the steel.
I am the Monitor, my boys.
The Monitor. That is such a specific and fascinating reference for him to make. He's comparing himself to the USS Monitor, the very first ironclad warship from the American Civil War.
Which is just a huge projection of self, right? He's even a man anymore. He's a warship. He yells at them, "You shoot children, you effing dogs. You can't shoot me."
And it actually takes a shotgun blast to the legs, which was the only exposed part of him, to finally bring the beast down.
Yeah. And when they rush forward and finally rip that crude, heavy steel helmet off, who do they find inside?
They expect a monster, and they find a 26-year-old man.
Ned Kelly. Shivering, ghastly white, smeared with blood and absolutely riddled with bullet wounds. He had literally transformed himself into a tank just to survive.
It's the defining image of the entire Kelly legend. The iron armor. The bucket helmet with that single slit for the eyes. It's an image that has been painted by Sidney Nolan. It's been filmed with Mick Jagger and Heath Ledger.
But what we are doing today in this deep dive is going way beyond that final showdown at Glenrowan. We aren't just looking at the steel plates. We're looking at the voice inside them.
Exactly. We are diving deep into Peter Carey's Booker Prize-winning novel, True History of the Kelly Gang.
Now, I have to ask you, when you first picked this up, did you think it was a straight biography? Because that title is a bit tricky.
It is very deceptive, true history. But this isn't a dry history textbook at all. It's a novel, but it's entirely presented as a found document.
Right.
It's a visceral first-person account. It uses the framework of history to get at a much deeper emotional truth about who this person was.
The premise of the book is really what hooked me immediately. The structure of the book itself tells a story before you even read a single word of the narrative. We are told right off the bat that what we are holding are 13 parcels.
And parcels is exactly the right word for it. These are described as stained, dog-eared, dirty papers. They were supposedly found in an old metal trunk cataloged as VL 10453 in the Melbourne Public Library.
And they aren't written on nice, clean stationery either. They're written on whatever Ned could get his hands on while he was on the run from the law.
Scraps of wrapping paper, the backs of old bills, and this is honestly my favorite detail from the Source National Bank letterhead that he stole during a bank robbery.
That is just such a massive flex. I robbed your bank, and now I'm writing my personal manifesto on your official stationery.
It's this quiet act of rebellion before he even writes a sentence.
It sets the stakes immediately for you as the reader. It tells
Yeah.
us that this text was written in the absolute margins of survival.
Yeah.
Ned isn't writing this for the newspapers. He isn't writing for the police to read, and he certainly isn't writing for us, the modern audience. He is writing it specifically for his daughter.
A daughter he has never actually seen, and likely never will see. He knows he's doomed. The hangman's noose is already tightening while he writes this. He's writing frantically, trying to leave something of himself behind. He says, I lost my own father at 12 years of age and know what it is to be raised on lies and silences.
That line really hit me hard when I read it, lies and silences. It feels like the core thesis statement for the entire book.
It really is. He follows it up by saying, this history is for you and will contain no single lie. May I burn in hell if I speak false.
No single lie. That is a very bold claim coming from a man that the police officially considered a wild beast and a habitual liar. But that's our mission today. We are focusing specifically on parcel 1 of these documents.
Right, which covers his life up until he was 12 years old.
Exactly. We want to understand for you, the listener, how does a boy from the poverty-stricken Pleurisy Plains eventually become the armored monster at Glenrowan?
We're looking for the seeds of the outlaw that were planted in his childhood. We want to see the specific world that made that iron armor necessary.
And to find those seeds, we really have to talk about the voice carry constructs here. Because if you open this book expecting crisp Victorian English or even just standard modern novel prose, you are going to be completely shocked.
Oh, it stops you right in your tracks. It takes a good few pages to even calibrate your brain to read it properly.
There are almost no commas, very few periods. The sentences just run on and on like a desperate stream of consciousness. It feels incredibly urgent.
It feels like he's trying to get the words out onto the paper before the ink dries or before the police catch up to him in the bush.
But it's not just bad grammar for the sake of it.
No, it's a very specific dialect, a dialect of resistance. It forces you to read at his pace, not yours. And did you notice how he handles the swearing throughout the text?
Oh, I love this detail. It's so peculiar and specific. He's writing to his daughter, right?
Yeah.
So he's trying to be a good father on the page, but he's quoting rough men in very rough situations.
Right.
So he uses these polite placeholders.
Right. He uses effing a lot, which we are pretty used to, but he also uses, and this is just the best one, adjectival.
Adjectival. It's such a weirdly formal, almost polite choice for a bushranger.
It's brilliant. He quotes his own mother screaming at the police, saying she would blow their adjectival brains out.
It creates this really fascinating tension in the narrative.
Yeah.
He's trying to be respectful, maybe to show his daughter that he has manners despite being a hunted outlaw. But the raw rage underneath the text is just palpable.
It actually makes the swearing feel heavier, doesn't it? Because you have to fill in the blank yourself.
Yes, you feel like you are sitting right there in the slab hut with him, smelling the wood smoke and the damp wool.
And that deep sensory immersion is so crucial for the very first scene in Parcel 1. So let's go back. Let's go to the very beginning. Ned's first memory.
Okay, so he is 3 years old. The year is roughly 1858. The location is a miserable slab hut with a leaking roof.
And the details Carey provides here are just heartbreaking. It's not just a generic, vague poverty. It's a highly specific, wet, freezing cold poverty.
They really are. Ned remembers his mother, Ellen Quinn. She's standing at the table, breaking eggs into a bowl, but she's crying.
And why is she crying?
Because her brother, Jimmy Quinn, who is Ned's uncle, has just been arrested. And he's only 15 years old, a kid.
And look at the contrast Carey paints for us here. You have the sweet yellow batter of the cake she's baking, something comforting, delicious, a clear sign of maternal love. And then you have the roof leaking cold rain right onto the camp oven. Ned says each drop hissed as it hit the hot iron.
It's domestic love entirely under siege. The sweetness of the cake pushed up against the cold, hissing reality of their extreme poverty. The environment is literally attacking their attempt at comfort.
And what happens next establishes the entire dynamic of the book. Ellen Quinn doesn't just sit there at the table and cry. She bakes the cake, she wraps it carefully in a muslin cloth, she picks up her baby, Maggie, and she marches straight out into the freezing rain.
And Ned, being only 3 years old, really has no choice but to follow her.
This walk they take, it's not a pleasant stroll. He describes the puddles on the ground as the color of mustard. The rain feels like needles in my eyes.
And the smell. He says they doubtless stank of poverty. He literally says they smelled like wet dogs.
They are walking up the steep hill to the Beveridge police camp. They are physically leaving their world, the vulnerable world of the slab hut, and entering the imposing domain of the antagonist.
And we meet him right here. the sergeant.
The nameless English sergeant.
Ned describes him as a huge, red-jowled creature. He remembers him sitting behind this big desk, looking like the most powerful man on earth. But it's the way Ned describes the desk itself that really got me. He says the sergeant looked at them as if he, the sergeant, was an altar.
That religious imagery is definitely no accident. In this colonial world, the church is very distant, but the police. The police are the gods. They demand absolute worship. They demand total submission from the Irish poor. They control the fate of the soul, or at least the physical body.
So Ellen Quinn tries to offer the cake. She explains it's for her brother Jimmy. She says she has butter to churn and pigs to feed at home. She's a busy working woman. She can't stay and chat. But the sergeant stops her cold.
He asserts his absolute dominance. He says, "No cake shall go to the prisoner without me inspecting it first."
It's such a petty, unnecessary display of power. It's a cake. But he has to control it. And then Carey focuses in on the hands.
Yes. Ned is hyper-focused on the sergeant's hands. Big, soft, white.
And the fingernails. He says they look like they were washed in lye.
Lye is a very harsh caustic cleaner. It implies a sterile, almost chemical cleanliness. It's the complete opposite of the Kelly's hands, which are chilblained, muddy, constantly covered in soil and labor. It represents a sterile, detached authority that doesn't understand or care about the messiness of real life.
And he uses those clean, livid fingernails to literally break the cake apart. He destroys it. He tears this beautiful gesture of love into a pile of wet crumbs right in front of them.
It's a profound violation. He isn't actually searching for a file or a weapon hidden inside. He is demonstrating that he can destroy what they made. He's demonstrating that their labor, the baking of the cake, belongs entirely to him if he wants it to.
And it highlights the massive class difference so sharply. This isn't just about enforcing the law. It's about inflicting humiliation. The source text actually inserts a poem right here, doesn't it?
It does. It says, "'Tis not poverty I hate the most, nor the eternal groveling, but the insults which grow on it, which not even leeches can cure."
The insults which leeches can't cure. That implies a deep sickness of the soul, not the body.
Exactly. A physical sickness you can bleed out with leeches, according to the medicine of the time. But humiliation, that stays in the blood forever. It festers.
And the humiliation just gets worse from there. The sergeant finally allows her to give the ruined crumbs to the prisoner. But she can't just hand it to him normally. She has to go outside to the lockup.
Which is a tiny, freezing slab hut, maybe 6 feet by 6 feet.
And the heavy door is locked tight. There is only a tiny gap at the bottom, maybe 2 inches high.
So picture this for a moment. Ellen Quinn, who is a fiercely proud woman, has to drop to her knees in the freezing mud in the pouring rain.
She kneels in the mud, and she has to physically push this muddy mess of cake and muslin under the door to her 15-year-old brother. Ned is clinging to her wet leg, kissing her skirt, but she's just numb. She's crying out, "God help us, Jimmy. What did we ever do to them that they should torture us like this?"
It's a scene of utter, devastating abasement. She's literally prostrating herself before the power of the law. But then, and this is vital for understanding Ned's future, the switch flips.
Yes. She doesn't just stay in that helpless victim role.
She wipes her face. And she curses them. She says, "I would kill the BADs if I were a man."
She uses those rough expressions. She says she would blow their adjectival brains out.
This specific moment establishes Ellen Quinn as the primary warrior figure in Ned's young life. She is fierce. She is incredibly dangerous. She is the fire in the family. She teaches Ned right then and there that when arbitrary power pushes you into the mud, you don't stay there. You plan your revenge.
Which brings us to the father, Red Kelly. Because if the mother is fire,
The father is ash.
John Red Kelly, a completely different figure entirely.
Completely. Ned describes him as a man of lies and silences. He was a transportee from Van Diemen's Land.
For any listeners who maybe aren't deep into Australian history, Van Diemen's Land is modern-day Tasmania. But back then,
It was the literal end of the world. It was a brutally harsh penal colony. Red Kelly had been ripped from his home in Tipperary in Ireland and sent to this absolute hell on earth just for stealing pigs. And the trauma of that penal experience clearly broke him as a man.
he just wants to be invisible, doesn't he?
He is terrified all the time. He wants to avoid the traps, which was slang for the police, at all costs. He walks softly, he speaks softly.
The mother actually thinks he's a coward. She calls him Michael Meek. It's such a cruel, emasculating nickname for your own husband.
It undermines him constantly in front of the children. But the police see him very differently. They don't see a broken, terrified man. They see a hardened career criminal. They are constantly searching his house, sifting through the flour bin for stolen goods, turning their lives upside down on a whim.
And this specific dynamic allows the police, specifically a new antagonist we are introduced to, Sergeant O'Neill, to actively drive a wedge between the father and the son. There is this scene that is it's pure psychological warfare.
The history lesson.
O'Neill comes to their hut. He's smiling. He's pretending to be super friendly. He even gives little Ned a pencil.
Which, for a poor, barefoot boy like Ned, who absolutely loves to learn, is a massive treasure. He smells the sweet pine and the graphite. He actually thinks O'Neill is being fatherly to him.
It's a classic grooming tactic. He is lowering the family's defenses. And then he tells a story. He calls a little history lesson about a certain man from Tipperary.
He just sits there drinking their tea by their fire and tells the family about a man who organized a group of friends to attack a cruel landlord back in Ireland. They burned the house, killed the family, really horrific, violent stuff. But then this certain man betrayed his own friends to save his own neck. The friends were hanged. The certain man was transported to Van Diemen's Land.
He is talking about Ned's father. He doesn't say the name out loud, but he's looking right at Ned Kelly the whole time. He implies it with every single word. He is effectively telling Ned, your father is a traitor. Your father is a snitch. Your father got his own friends killed.
And for a boy like Ned, who clearly values loyalty above everything else, I mean, remember, this is the boy who will eventually write a truthful manifesto for his daughter. This is absolute poison. Ned says the memory of those words lay inside him like the egg of a liver fluke.
A liver fluke? That's a horrible parasite that literally eats a sheep from the inside out.
Precisely. O'Neill isn't just enforcing the law here. He is intentionally dismantling the family unit. He is destroying the son's foundational respect for the father. And he doesn't stop at just attacking the father's honor. He goes straight for his masculinity next.
This is the part of Parcel 1 that I think shocks everyone when they first read it. The dress.
The accusation of transvestism.
It starts so casually, too. Ned and his older brother, Jem, are hanging out at a local cattle auction. They run into O'Neill and a local schoolyard bully named Patchy Moran. O'Neill casually mentions to the boys that he saw Ned Kelly riding across the paddocks the other day, wearing a dress.
A dress with roses on the hem.
A woman's dress. O'Neill implies it's because Ned Kelly is a pervert. He says he was off to be serviced by his husband, I suppose.
It is a deeply homophobic and profoundly emasculating insult. And for a young boy growing up in the rugged, hyper-masculine environment of the Australian bush, this is just confusing and completely horrifying. Ned tries to fight O'Neill right there. He actually jumps onto the man's stirrup to attack him, but he's just a little kid. He gets swatted away like a fly.
But the rumor spreads like wildfire. Patchy Moran starts taunting Ned relentlessly at school. He calls Ned a sissy and the son of a sissy.
And Ned reacts with extreme, shocking violence. This is really the wild beast coming out for the very first time. He fights Patchy Moran, who is much older and significantly bigger than him, gets him on the ground, and this is a detail you just can't invent. There are bull ants involved in the fight.
Bull ants. For anyone who doesn't know, these are huge, aggressive Australian ants with a sting that feels like pure fire.
Ned holds Patchy down on the ground while bull ants are biting both of them. He absolutely refuses to let go until Patchy takes the insult back. He forces the bully to apologize while they are both actively being stung. It is relentless.
It shows Ned's incredible capacity for enduring immense physical pain just to protect his family's name. He will hurt himself just to hurt you. But here's the real tragedy of the situation. The rumor was actually true.
Or at least the physical object of the rumor existed.
Right. Sometime later, Ned is clearing rocks out in the thistle patch with his sister Maggie, and they find a buried metal trunk in the dirt. Ned pries it open, and inside is the dress.
A woman's dress with faded roses on the hem. And hidden with it are masks made of red paint and feathers.
Ned is just completely devastated. He burns it. He burns the dress in an absolute rage. He feels like everything O'Neill said, all the slander, might actually be true.
Oh.
But wait, we really need to unpack this for a second. Why did Ned Kelly have a dress hidden in a trunk? Was he actually a cross-dresser?
To young Ned, it's purely shame. It's perversion. But historically, we have to look back at Ireland. In the 18th and 19th centuries, groups like the White Boys and the Molly Maguires, which were secret agrarian rebel societies, often wore women's clothing as a deliberate disguise during their nighttime raids.
Wait, really? Like combat cross-dressing?
Absolutely. It was highly practical. It disguised their identity from the authorities, but it was also deeply symbolic. It made them look ghostly, unnatural, almost mythological. It absolutely terrified the British landlords. They called themselves the Lady Clare boys or Molly's children. It was a deliberate way of stepping entirely outside the normal social order to commit acts of rebellion and violence.
Now, and we should just note here, for you listening, we're not taking a political stance on colonial history or policing tactics here. We're just unpacking the specific historical dynamic Peter Carey sets up in this source. So, the father might have kept this dress as a sacred relic of his rebel days, a symbol of his active resistance against the British.
Exactly. It might have been the single most honorable thing he owned in his life, a potent symbol of his fight for freedom back in Ireland. But here is the central tragedy of the silence Ned talks about. Red Kelly never told Ned.
He never explained it to his own son.
No. So to the colonial police, it's just a sign of deviance to mock. And to Ned, who doesn't understand the deep Irish history, it's just a source of confusing, burning shame. He says, I lost my own father from a secret. He feels like his father is somehow buttoned up inside that cursed dress.
It breaks the bond completely. The silence is what destroys them.
And the father, Red Kelly, knows it. When he comes home and sees the burnt, smoldering remains of the trunk, he doesn't say a single word. He just stares at it. He knows his son has found him out, and he withdraws even further into himself. He effectively becomes a ghost in his own house.
Which directly leads to their economic downfall. They leave Beveridge, they move to a place called Avenel.
The Pleurisy Plains.
The name really says it all, doesn't it? Pleurisy is a severe lung inflammation. It literally hurts to breathe there.
It perfectly captures the harshness of the environment. The wind constantly howls. The soil is incredibly poor. It's an economic trap. And there is this underlying conflict over land ownership that really frames their poverty.
The mother desperately wants to buy land under the Duffy Land Act. She wants the security of being a landowner. Her family, the Quinns, are buying up thousands of acres, acting wild and rich.
The Quinns really represent the wild Irish spirit in the book. They are buying land they can't really afford, riding fast thoroughbreds, fighting constantly, drinking heavily. They are alive. They are reckless, sure, but they are undeniably alive.
And Red Kelly is the complete opposite of that. He's overly cautious. He refuses to buy land. He insists on renting instead. He slowly drinks away what little savings they have. He argues that the wild Quinns attract the police, like rabbit guts will bring the flies.
And he is right, of course. The Quinns do attract constant police attention. But to his wife and his son, his caution just looks like sheer cowardice. It looks like he's already a beaten man. And their poverty becomes incredibly desperate. There is a severe drought. The family is literally starving. They have absolutely no meat.
Which brings us to the heifer incident. This is technically Ned's very first crime. But when you read it, it doesn't feel like a crime. It feels like pure survival.
He's walking along the dry, cracked creek bed, and he sees a heifer, a young cow, owned by a wealthy neighbor, Mr. Murray. The cow is well-fed, sleek, healthy. Ned is starving. His little siblings are starving.
He decides he has to kill it. And he's just a boy. He manages to tie it up. But he doesn't even have a knife on him. He has to run all the way back to the hut, steal the carving knife from right under his mother's nose, and run all the way back.
And the killing itself. The source text is brutally honest here. Carey doesn't spare us any details. Ned says he did it badly. He failed to find the artery on the first try. He describes the poor heifer's neck as a sea of laceration. He writes, I will never forget the terror in her eyes.
He feels immense guilt. Not for stealing property from wealthy Mr. Murray, but for the animal's terrible suffering. He says if there was a law against the murder of a beast, he would gladly plead guilty.
This gives us a really key insight into his personal morality. He isn't a cold psychopath. He has deep, profound empathy. He actually sees himself as a soldier fighting in a war for survival. I were no more guilty than a soldier in a war, he says. He just did what he had to do to feed the troops.
So the family feasts on the meat. But the police constable Doxy this time comes sniffing around the property. They find the hidden hide. The brand has been deliberately cut out.
And here is where the father, Michael Meek, finally tries to step up. But not at all in the way Ned wants or needs.
Red Kelly takes the blame. He claims he killed the cow himself to make a green hide whip. It's a completely pathetic, transparent lie. Doxy sees right through it instantly. He says, unless the whip can fill this hole exactly, you're going in the adjective lockup.
Ned desperately tries to confess. He shouts, I done it with the carving knife. But his father physically silences him. Shut your gob, he says. Red Kelly willingly goes to prison to save his son.
Now, you would think this would finally heal the rift between them, right? A noble fatherly sacrifice. But it's much more complicated than that. Ned admits something incredibly chilling here. He says life was harder, but in some ways more pleasant without his father around.
That is just a terrible, heavy thing for a young son to admit to himself.
The constant tension in the hut was gone. The lingering shame was gone. He says he had already lost his father from a secret long before he ever lost him to the prison system. The sacrifice of taking the blame didn't magically fix the broken trust caused by the dress and the years of silence.
And with the father gone, Ned has to grow up extremely fast. He officially becomes the man of the house at age 11. This leads directly to the scene that I think truly defines his complex relationship with his mother, the birth of Grace.
This scene is so incredibly vivid. It is a violent, stormy night, August 1865. The local creek is rapidly flooding. Ned comes home soaking wet to find his mother in heavy labor on the cold earthen floor.
There is no doctor around, no midwife, just 11-year-old Ned and the terrified little kids. His mother is in absolute agony. She forces him to help her. She climbs onto a wooden table, and this is a table with a broken leg that the father never bothered to fix.
That specific detail is so telling. The father's ongoing neglect literally makes the mother's pain unstable. The table is dangerously wobbling while she is trying to give birth.
Ned has to hold her hand tight. He has to be her anchor in the storm. He actually has to cut the umbilical cord himself with old scissors he heated up in the fireplace. He sees his new sister, Grace, for the first time. He says she was like a little foal glistening white in the firelight. He loves her immediately.
But then, of course, the outside world intrudes on them again. Dr. May finally arrives, drunk and very late. He sees an 11-year-old boy assisting at his own mother's birth.
And he gossips about it. Soon the entire school knows. The Protestant kids whisper cruel things about how Ned saw his mother's nakedness. It becomes yet another source of deep public shame. They take a profound moment of survival and turn it into something dirty and perverted.
But inside the hut, it was a moment of profound intimacy and trust. Ned is his mother's equal partner in survival now. He is her protector. He has entirely taken the father's empty place.
And the text gives us a truly heartbreaking moment right after the birth to confirm this total displacement. Ned runs through the rain to the town jail to tell his father the good news. He yells through the heavy wooden logs, "You got a girl, her name is Grace."
Absolute silence. No answer at all.
Just the father's cat standing on a nearby grave mound, staring blankly at Ned.
Ned gets furious. He picks up a stone and throws it at the cat. That image. Throwing a stone at his father's cat because the father won't even answer him through the wall.
The emotional bond is just completely permanently severed. The father is physically alive just a few yards away inside that cell, but he is entirely dead to Ned. He is irrelevant. Ned is the man now.
And soon after, Red Kelly is dead for real. He dies shortly after being released, physically and mentally broken by the prison time. But by then, Ned is already looking desperately for a new identity. He doesn't want to be the poor son of an Irish convict. He wants to be respectable.
Which brings us to the good boy arc of Parcel 1, the story of the sash. This is absolutely essential because it shows us the path not taken by Ned Kelly.
This is such a pivotal moment in his life. Ned is really trying to stay out of trouble. He's walking to school along the flooded banks of Hughes Creek. Suddenly he sees a boy, Dick Shelton, drowning in the rough water.
Now, Dick Shelton isn't just any boy. He is the son of the publican at the Royal Mail Hotel.
Yes.
These are very respectable, wealthy, influential people in the town.
Ned dives right in. He doesn't hesitate for a second. The water is violent. He says it was slippery as a pig. He manages to drag the boy out to safety. And then he is carried away to the Shelton's hotel.
This scene reads almost like Ned stepping through the wardrobe into Narnia. He enters the Royal Mail Hotel, and it's a different universe.
He's given a hot bath in an actual porcelain tub. He's never even seen a bathtub before. He says it was a blessed miracle. He's given warm, dry clothes, Mr. Shelton's older son's clothes that smell clean and nice. He sits at a polished table with real silver cutlery, a sugar bowl with a delicate curved spoon. He eats lamb chops and kidneys for breakfast.
He is getting a real taste of the comfortable life he has been denied his entire existence, the life of the English snobs, and the deep tragedy here is he loves it. He actually fits in perfectly. He has good manners. He desperately wants to belong to this safe, warm world.
Mrs. Shelton tells him he is the best and bravest boy in the whole world. Mr. Shelton tries to hand him money as a reward, but Ned proudly refuses it. He wants something else entirely. He wants to keep the clothes.
He wants the literal costume of respectability. He thinks if he just wears the clothes, he magically becomes the person.
Exactly. But he doesn't get to keep them. He has to take them off and go right back to his damp rags. However, Mr. Shelton promises a grand presentation ceremony at the local school to honor him.
The scene at the school assembly is just excruciating to read. The teacher, Mr. Irving, absolutely hates the Irish. He openly calls them Irish rubbish. But he is forced to host Mr. Shelton, who is a prominent citizen, so he has to grit his teeth and praise Ned.
Ned is called up to the front of the room. He sees a brown paper parcel on the desk. He thinks, this is it. It's the clothes. I'm going to be respectable. He closes his eyes and opens it.
And it is not the clothes.
It's a sash, a massive 7-foot-long sash.
Yeah.
Peacock green, richly embroidered with gold thread, it says, to Edward Kelly in gratitude for his courage from the Shelton family.
It is entirely a symbol. It is a beautiful, completely useless object for a boy who is starving. To the wealthy Sheltons, it is a high honor, but to the police and the bitter teacher, it's a total joke. A fancy, expensive sash draped on a barefoot, ragged Irish boy, it just highlights his extreme poverty rather than hiding it.
But Ned, he absolutely loves it anyway. He wears it proudly. It becomes a sacred talisman to him. And here's a historical fact that connects this all together. Years later, at the bloody siege of Glenrowan, hidden under that heavy steel armor.
He was wearing the green sash.
He was wearing the sash.
Yeah.
It was stained deep with his own blood when they took the armor off. It perfectly represents the good Ned, the hero Ned that polite society completely rejected. It's his secret proofs that he wasn't simply born a monster.
And consider the timing Carey gives us here. The source specifically notes that at the very hour Ned received this beautiful sash at school, the severed head of the famous bushranger Morgan was being paraded down the public highway outside.
Talk about heavy foreshadowing. One infamous outlaw is publicly decapitated while the future outlaw is standing in a classroom being honored for bravery.
It underlines the sheer tragedy of his trajectory. Ned genuinely tried to be the ink monitor at school. He carefully lined up the inkwells perfectly. He wanted to do a good job. He wanted to fit in. He writes, the Protestants of Avenel had seen the goodness in an Irish boy.
But the colonial system simply wouldn't let him stay good. The police harassment of his family continued, unabated. The ugly slander about his dead father continued. Parcel 1 ends with this crushing realization. He can be a good boy, he can be incredibly brave, he can literally save a life. But he's still a Kelly. He is still always going to be Irish rubbish to men like Sergeant O'Neill.
And that profound, inescapable realization is the engine that ultimately drives him toward the armor.
So let's synthesize all of this for the listener. We started this deep dive with the wild beast at Glenrowan, the terrifying monster in the iron mask walking into the gunfire. But by looking closely at Parcel 1, we finally see exactly where the steel came from.
The armor didn't start at Glenrowan at all. It started when a 3-year-old boy watched his proud mother push cake crumbs under a locked door in the freezing mud. It started when he had to burn his own father's dress to hide the family's shame. It started when he realized that no matter how many rich boys he saved from drowning, he would never, ever be allowed to sit at the table with the silver cutlery permanently.
The armor is a direct response to absolute vulnerability. He was exposed his whole life, exposed to the rain, to the police insults, to the crushing poverty, to the slander. So he eventually built a literal shell that nothing could penetrate.
Exactly. He writes this entire history to his unborn daughter to essentially say, I am not a monster. I was made into one by the world.
He says, I know what it is to be raised on lies and silences. He wants to give her the unvarnished truth. But does he actually achieve that? That's the big question Carey leaves us with.
The source text actually quotes William Faulkner right at the beginning. The past is not dead. It is not even past. Ned is desperately trying to control his own past by writing it down. But the intense violence of his unpunctuated language, the violence of his actions, in a way, it unintentionally confirms the wild beast image, even as he tries so hard to deny it.
It's the ultimate paradox of the outlaw. You have to become a monster in order to fight the monsters that are oppressing you.
And who ultimately owns the truth of history? The colonial police with their clean fingernails and their official filed reports? Or the desperate man writing his truth on stained, dog-eared bank papers hidden in a metal trunk?
That is exactly the provocative question we want to leave you with today. When you look at that famous, iconic image of the Kelly helmet, the heavy iron bucket with the single dark eye slit, take a moment to remember what's actually inside it. A little boy who just wanted to be the ink monitor. A boy who never forgot the smell of sweet yellow batter and the rain feeling like needles in his eyes.
It changes how you see the entire Australian legend. It makes you realize that, more often than not, monsters are manufactured by society, not born.
It certainly does. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into Parcel 1 of Peter Carey's True History of the Kelly Gang. We'll catch you on the next one. Keep unpacking the truth.